know, we've been using Okuma reels now for about 4 to 5 years. And one of the things that we realize that's always a problem is when you go to put line on a spinning reel. For a lot of people, they go out and make 10 casts and then they get these 3 line tangles. And realistically, it's not your fault. It's because whoever put the line on the reel didn't put it on there correctly. So I think it's really cool to show you guys how to do it. So I pulled this new Helios out of the box and we're gonna string it up through the Ricky Red rod. Now the one thing that I've done here is I got my diamond braid up there on the pegboard, and as you can tell, I have the label facing me. That's the key, understanding that when the line comes off of the spool, it's got to go on the spool on the reel in the same way that it's coming off. And I'll explain to you a little better if that's a little confusing. I understand, but you can tell that, see how it has a natural curve to it. So what we're trying to do is make sure that we wind that line off, have it come off of the spool and go onto the reel the same way. So I've made a loop in my double line, and I'm just gonna lay it over the spool so that it crosses over the checkering part of the bail there. And then that's gonna grab it for me. Now, it's really simple at this part, guys. If the curls in the mono or the curls in the spool of braided line are going this way, we wanna wind them onto the spool in the same way. So the spool spins this way, so we wanna make sure that those loops come off of the spool of line the same way so that we're not going against the memory that's built into the spool. So by sticking it on a pegboard like that, or having your friend or one of your kids or your wife hold the line, it's not going to be twisted as you wind it onto the line. And that's why line machines on spinning reel spools most of the time don't work, because you're winding it off of the spool at the tackle store. They're winding it onto a spinning reel spool like this. This is the way you would do if it was, pull it off of the spool if it was going on to a level wind or a bait casting style of reel. But you can see those loops there. Those loops, we need to make sure that when we wind it on the spool, the spinning rod, that those loops are going on the same way. Now, here's an easy way to figure it out. First off, always run the line through your guides. I ran it through the guides. Now I'm holding up here, and as I wind the spool, wind the line off of the spool, it's coming off of that spool, and I need to check it. Now here's how I'm gonna check it. I'm gonna take that line and pull it down like so. If the line starts to twist back against itself, then all I'm gonna do is take the spool off the pegboard and reverse it so that the label is pointing towards the wall instead of towards me. Most cases, this label always seems to be in the correct way. If the label's facing me, then most of the time it works very well. So as I wind 20 or so full cranks, I'm gonna come back to here, I'm gonna pull it down. See how it's twisting? So what I gotta do now is I gotta go reverse that, because the spool's memory is coming off. Look at how tight these little loops are. Those loops are telling me that I'm winding against the memory as the manufacturer put it on that big spool. So, real simple. Set the rod down for 1 second. Always make sure when you're winding that you're not tip wrapped, because the tip wrap can cause a state of confusion. I'm just gonna turn this around like so and stick it on the pegboard, and that should loosen up those loops. And again, how we're checking it as we wind it onto the reel is that we'll make a few turns, 20 or so turns, and then I'm looking for the tightness of the line coming through the guides. Twisting. So it's a lot worse twisting and the lines are a lot tighter, see? Right there. So obviously I gotta have the loop facing me the right way, or have the spool facing me the right way. Yeah, it's getting tighter. So I had it the right way to begin with. I just wasn't winding it on there with the attention. So that's the key, is look at the relaxed part of the line. As they twist up, then you're going to want to switch it. And there's some times where you got to switch it back and forth until you get it right. Look, much more relaxed, not quite as tight. Part of what might have happened was when I first did that, pulling it off, I was going against it because the last spool of line that I filled, I actually was putting it on a bait caster, so it was coming off on a level wind, so I might have twisted it myself while I was doing that. Keep checking it. Perfect, see, not twisting back against itself. Now I know that I'm winding it on there correctly. Now all I gotta do is worry about how much I get on there level-wise. That's very, very critical on a spinning reel. If you overfill it, then what'll end up happening is you'll get a loose loop of line, and eventually you'll have 3 or 4 loops come off in a tangle. We call it a 3-line tangle, and then that makes it a mess. And that's not very much fun when you've gone and put new line on your reels and you get 5 minutes of casting out of it and it doesn't work well. Fill it up to this back part of the spool is about like so. You don't want to have it overflow in the front part. As you can tell, very relaxed loops. Look, they're not twisting back against itself, so now I got it correctly. My spool is completely full. I could probably turn a few more, 5 more 6 cranks and be good. That's the Diamond Braid 10-pound, 2-pound diameter, 10-pound line. I like it sky blue, it matches the sky. And now I just go ahead and tie my leader on and I'm ready to go. Now those of you guys, how many guys have ever used a bait casting reel? Or even maybe a level wind reel? Like, you know, for kite fishing. You guys aren't paying attention and you get a backlash. So I'm gonna show you how you can get that backlash out. So we're gonna backlash this reel. Now remember, the reason why the backlash happened was because the line, the spool itself was spinning a lot faster than the line was going out of the tip of the rod. So how we're gonna fix this is every one of these places that we should pick or cut out with a pair of scissors or pliers, we're gonna simply take our thumb and put our thumb on the spool, and we're gonna wind the spool, wind the reel handle, and as you see one of those spots that needs to be picked, you slide your fingernail over there in front of it and just keep winding the handle of the reel, and then you'll get to those spots. Now watch, when we go to pull this out, if we get any that need to be, which we didn't, if we were to get any of those knots, we would just take our fingernail, put our fingernail on the spool, and when we wind, we're winding the spool underneath the knot or the part that should be typically picked. So let me do it for you one more time. And this applies for even a Okuma Azor 16, 20, 12, Makira. If you're running out there and you're trolling and somebody's not paying attention, and you're doing a drop back and get a backlash. It might take 2 of you. One of you needs to be the thumb man and the other guy needs to be the cranker. So we're gonna backlash the spool again. So every one of those spots that needs to be picked, we're gonna actually, it's a good reel that won't backlash. There we go. So now we're gonna put our thumb here. That little spot right there, I would normally have to pick that. I'm gonna take my thumb, put it on there, and wind the reel handle. Slide my fingernail over to the spot. And what that does is the spool revolves while my thumb is pinching off the part that needs to be picked. There it is. So keep that in mind. That's one way to keep your backlashes when you do get one. Eliminate them from becoming knots. Don't pick it, just put your thumb on there. Remember, Captain Rick showed you this cool little trick, and then you won't have any more issues when it comes to backlashes. That ought to be your 101 for the day. Putting line on a spinning reel and getting backlashes out of a conventional type of reel. Line management 101. If you want to know more about these tips, all you got to do is subscribe.